Good evening, wanderer. I'm Mooncat, your guide through tonight's journey into the mysterious and calming world of Velarghast, the midnight market. Here, time drifts gently, and the night hums with quiet magic. As we walk with Zaelith Vonnari, a charming and confident adventurer, you'll find yourself surrounded by soft whispers of old stories, enchanted treasures, and the comforting rhythm of the night. This is a place where shadows are not to be feared but explored, so settle in, let the worries of the day slip away, and allow the quiet calm of Velarghast to carry you gently toward rest. I'll be here to guide you through every turn of the market's paths, where dreams and reality blur together in the most delightful way. And if by the end you find yourself drifting off, or simply enjoying the magic of the moment, remember to like and subscribe to Mooncat Stories for more peaceful journeys. Let's begin, shall we? The midnight market of Velarghast was in many ways like any other market. There were stalls, traders, strange smells, and the distinct sense that someone somewhere was trying to sell you something utterly useless while claiming it was a rare artifact of immeasurable power. But Velarghast was not your usual kind of market. For one, it only appeared when the moon was just so, hanging like a hooked fingernail in the sky. For another, it was located somewhere between the world of the living and several realms that most sensible people tried to avoid. Zaelith Vonnari, however, was not most people. She was a drow, a woman of many talents, and as some would say, cultured. This mostly meant she had a knack for appearing at just the right moment, especially when things were getting interesting or dangerous. She moved through the winding alleys of the market, her violet eyes gleaming as she surveyed the unusual assortment of goods on offer. Her long silver-white hair shimmered in the moonlight, her midnight blue skin blending almost effortlessly into the shadows. As she wandered past stalls brimming with exotic fruits, enchanted trinkets, and dubious potions claiming to cure ailments that only existed in very specific corners of the multiverse, Zaelith couldn't help but smile. Velarghast always had a way of making her feel alive. It was a place where anything and everything could happen, and it usually did. She walked with confidence, weaving her way between traders who shouted their wares with the kind of enthusiasm only people trying to sell magical lawn ornaments could muster. And Zaelith, she was in no hurry. The night was young, the moon was bright, an adventure, or at least a good cup of strong tea, was just around the corner. Zaelith's path inevitably led her to the stall of Zaelith, a Djinni who was by most standards far too relaxed for someone surrounded by objects that could explode at any given moment. His stall was a veritable treasure trove of shiny things, gems that glimmered with an unnatural glow, enchanted vials filled with liquids that seemed to defy the laws of nature, and the occasional lamp that, for reasons best left unexplored, hummed ominously. Zaelith lounged behind his wares, reclining on a cushion that might have once belonged to a sultan, but now looked distinctly threadbare. His bronze skin shimmered under the market's soft glow, and his dark eyes gleamed with a mix of mischief and deep, ancient boredom. Zaelith Vonnari, he said, his voice a rich purr that seemed to roll across the air like a lazy cat. Come to buy something you don't need, but absolutely want. Zaelith smiled, her eyes scanning the gleaming assortment of objects. Not quite. I'm here to see what mischief you're up to this time, Zaelith. After all, you always have something. Shh, me. The Djinni chuckled, a sound like distant thunder, and motioned to the gleaming collection of artifacts. Old habits die hard. You know how it is. People want things, especially things that sparkle. And he added with a grin, "I'm very old." Zaelith raised an eyebrow. "How old?" Scheherazade gave her a mock, serious look. "Old enough to remember when the stars first learned to twinkle." He gestured to the assorted baubles before him. This is barely a fraction of what I've gathered in my time. The rest would take several lifetimes to sort through, and even then I doubt you'd believe it." Zaelith chuckled, but something in the Djinni's words made her curiosity perk up. "And out of all this," she asked, leaning in slightly, "which treasure do you value the most?" For the first time, Scheherazade paused. The easy grin slipped from his face, replaced by something more thoughtful. He motioned toward an unimpressive brass lamp sitting off to the side, nearly hidden behind a pile of sparkling jewels. It was dull, tarnished, and looked like it hadn't been polished in a century or several. That, he said softly, was my prison. Zaelith blinked, caught off guard by the sudden seriousness in his voice. Scheherazade ran a hand over the lamp, his touch gentle, almost reverent. "I spent thousands of years trapped in that lamp, granting wishes for anyone foolish enough to rub it. Most of them were, of course, idiots. But then, one day, someone used their wish to set me free. No one had ever done that before." Zaelith's violet eyes softened. "That's rare, indeed. Who was this person?" A faint smile touched the Djinni's lips. "A friend. The only true one I ever had. I stayed by his side until the day he died." There was a moment of silence between them, the weight of the story settling in the air like mist. Zaelith nodded, her voice gentle. "It's a rare gift to find someone who will use their power for another's freedom." Scheherazade smiled wistfully, the gleam returning to his eyes. "Indeed. But enough of that." He waved a hand, his usual grin returning. "What about that dream fire I showed you last time? Tempted to..." Zaelith smirked. "I'll think about it." The Djinni chuckled. "You'll be back." After bidding Scheherazade farewell, Zaelith wandered further into the depths of the market. The air grew thicker here, fragrant with herbs and strange concoctions. It was then that she spotted the stall, a crooked, ancient thing made of gnarled wood and covered in what looked like a patchwork of cloth and strange symbols. Behind it sat an old woman, her eyes pale and clouded with age. Yet her hands moved with surprising speed, sorting through bundles of herbs and jars filled with things best left unidentified. Before Zaelith could speak, the old woman's head tilted up, a sly grin spreading across her wrinkled face. "Zaelith Vonnari," she said, her voice raspy but filled with a strange warmth. Zaelith blinked. "And you must be the famed Karasithra, the witch doctor." Karasithra chuckled softly, her fingers moving deftly over a jar of dried roots, her eyes not needing to see what her hands already knew. "Indeed. The market speaks, you know, and I listen." Zaelith raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "How do you know who I am?" The old woman gave a conspiratorial smile, waggling her fingers in the air. "Magic," she whispered, her tone filled with mischievous delight, followed by a giggle that sounded far too playful for someone her age. Zaelith chuckled, shaking her head. Of course. And where do you hail from? Zaelith asked, her curiosity piqued. The witch doctor's fingers paused for a moment. From a land long forgotten, she murmured, her voice distant. Once it was a place of green hills and tall trees, but now it is little more than a memory, a faint whisper. Zaelith felt a pang of sadness, but before she could express it, Karasithra waved a hand dismissively. Oh, don't worry about that, dear. I feel at home wherever I go, as long as I have my companion. From beneath the stall emerged the strangest chicken Zaelith had ever seen. Its feathers shimmered in a bright, iridescent pink, reflecting the light like the surface of an enchanted bubble. It clucked softly and settled near the witch doctor's feet. Zaelith stared at it, her mouth opening slightly. That is a very pink chicken. Karasithra grinned, patting the bird fondly. Isn't she wonderful? Zaelith shrugged. I've seen stranger things. She hesitated, then added with a smirk. By the way, do you have anything for dry, itchy skin? The witch doctor burst into laughter, reaching for a small jar on the counter and pressing it into Zaelith's hands. Use this on the full moon for 3 moons, she instructed with a wink, but spit in it first, and drink more water, dear. Hydration is important. Zaelith couldn't help but laugh as well. Thank you, Karasithra. Oh, try to remember that. Before she could leave, the old woman pressed a bundle of crimson leaves into Zaelith's hand. They were deep red, their edges soft, and they smelled faintly sweet. Burn these, she said, her voice serious now, whenever you feel truly alone. Zaelith looked down at the leaves, surprised by the gesture. Thank you. Karasithra smiled, her pale eyes twinkling. The market provides. As Zaelith wandered further into Velarghast, she heard the unmistakable clang of metal and found herself at the stall of Thrain Ironroot, a dwarf who looked as solid as the weapons he forged. His stall was covered in axes, swords, and other implements of destruction, all gleaming under the market light. Thrain gave her a nod. You've got the look of someone who appreciates a good blade. Zaelith smiled. I've had my share of encounters with them. The dwarf grinned, setting aside a polished warhammer. Got any stories to trade? I've got plenty of my own if you're interested. Zaelith laughed, the memory of such battles flickering through her mind like distant flames. More than once, I'm afraid. I remember one in particular, a blade forged from black iron, wielded by an ancient wraith. Its edge burned with cold fire, and it left frost in the air with every swing. I was barely fast enough to dodge it, but in the end, it shattered when it struck stone. The dwarf whistled low, impressed. Black iron, you say? Nasty stuff. Takes a special kind of wraith to wield that without losing itself entirely. Zaelith nodded, her smile lingering as she glanced over the weapons once more. What about you? Surely you've come across a few remarkable pieces yourself. The dwarf's grin widened, his eyes twinkling with the thrill of sharing his own tales. I have. There was a warhammer I once forged for a king, its head made from the bones of a dragon. That thing could split mountains, or so the king claimed. But the finest weapon I've ever seen wasn't one of mine. It was a blade forged by an old friend of mine, the kind of smith who works magic into every strike of the hammer. The sword was called Heartsworn, and it was said to be able to read the soul of whoever held it. If you were true, it sang for you. But if you were false, he shook his head, a low, thoughtful hum escaping his throat. It could cut through your lies with a single stroke. Zaelith listened, her fingers idly tracing the hilt of one of her own daggers as the dwarf spoke. She could picture the blade, its craftsmanship, its weight, the feel of its magic humming through the air. It reminded her of her own weapons, those she carried with her always, close and familiar, as much a part of her as the armor she wore. His eyes soon fell on the twin daggers at her hip. Those daggers, he said, squinting at them. They're not just for show, are they? Zaelith smiled, her fingers lightly brushing the smooth, polished hilts. No, they're not, she replied, her voice soft with memory. These daggers are called Shadowfang and Moon's Whisper. They were given to me by a guardian spirit long ago, during a journey to the hidden temples in the Duskspire Mountains. I had travelled there seeking knowledge, but instead I found myself caught in a struggle between ancient forces. The Guardian, an old and powerful being, entrusted me with these weapons to help defeat a curse that had plagued the temple for centuries. The dwarf listened intently, his hands resting on the counter, his eyes never leaving the daggers as Zaelith spoke. They carry the essence of the spirit within them, she continued, her voice quiet but steady. 1. Shadowfang is as swift as the night itself. It cuts through darkness, through illusions, and strikes true, even against unseen enemies. The other, Moon's Whisper, is lighter, almost weightless. It moves like a breath of wind, sharp and silent. Together, they've saved my life more times than I can count. Thrain whistled appreciatively. A fine pair, indeed. Spirits don't often part with such treasures. Zaelith met his gaze, a small, knowing smile on her lip. No, they don't. And I don't take them for granted. These daggers are more than weapons to me. They're a reminder of the path I've walked, the battles I've fought, and the allies I've made along the way. The dwarf chuckled, his voice a warm rumble. Aye, lass, a weapon with a story is worth more than all the gold in the world. And yours, he said, gesturing to the daggers with a nod of approval, carry quite the tale. Zaelith smiled, the warmth of the conversation settling over her like a comforting cloak. Thank you, Thrain. It's been a pleasure. As the night deepened, the lanterns of Velarghast began to dim, casting long shadows that stretched across the winding paths. The market, with its strange hum of life and magic, was quieting down, the traders packing away their wares, the air filled with the soft sigh of a world ready to sleep. Zaelith walked confidently through the fading glow, the soft bundle of crimson leaves still nestled in her hand. The memories of the night swirled in her mind, stories shared, treasures glimpsed, and the comforting sense that this strange, wondrous place would always be here, waiting for her return. As she reached the edge of the market, the distant hum of Velarghast faded into the night, the soft breeze carrying with it the faintest scent of spices and magic. Zaelith smiled to herself, her heart light and her step steady. The future, as always, held its mysteries, but for now the night was quiet and the path ahead was calm. And so, with the stars glimmering above and the road stretching out before her, Zaelith Vonnari left Velarghast, knowing that adventure would find her again soon enough. And now, dear wanderer, as Zaelith leaves the midnight market, the world of Velarghast begins to fade. The soft glow of the lanterns, the distant hum of the traders, and the quiet magic of the night all settle into a gentle stillness, you too are ready to step into the calm of sleep, carrying with you the peace of this enchanting place. The stars are dimming, the market's whispers are fading, and all that remains is the steady rhythm of rest. As you drift into dreams, know that Velarghast will always be there, waiting for you, a place of endless wonder and calm. If this story has brought you a sense of peace, remember to like and subscribe to Mooncat Stories for more journeys into the soothing corners of the imagination. For now, sleep well, wanderer, and may your dreams be filled with quiet magic and gentle adventures.